Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special edition of The Jay Willie Show. Typically on Monday nights, Locker Room Access hosts The Jay Willie Show. In its normal form, it's informal, it's educational, it's light and fun. Tonight, we are deciding to, with the current state of this country, talk about racism, police brutality, and everything going on. We would feel short, we would be nothing short of irresponsible if we did not do that. So we thank you very much for joining us. I'm your host, Mark Jerome. Joining us now, Jason Williford, who played at UVA in 91 and 95 and current associate head coach. Malcom Brogdon, who played at UVA, who's a standout UVA player, rookie of the year a few years ago, and current Indiana Pacer, and mentor, whether he knows it or not, to Ty Jerome. Also joining us is Ty Jerome, my child, graduate or left after his third year at UVA and now rookie with the Phoenix Suns. Some of you know me, and some of you know that my mom is Black and my dad, who recently passed away, is white. They marched on the front lines of the civil rights movement and taught me about racism at an early age. From that point, I experienced tons of racism. I've been called nigger. I've been harassed by the police. I've had guns drawn on me. I've been arrested falsely twice. The purpose of this roundtable is to discuss and bring to light racism, educate people, and to support each other, and ultimately to make changes so we are truly living under an equal system. Jason, my first question to you. Colin Kaepernick sacrificed his life, his job, his income for something bigger than him. Something that may have cost him his career. Some coaches are not speaking out, possibly for the same reason. Why do you think it's important to take the stance you're taking for someone in your position?
I think it's gone on way too long, to be quite honest. And I think what Kaepernick actually took a knee for gets lost in the debate. And he was protesting and trying to make a stand for police brutality, and we continue to see it over and over again. And that message cannot be blurred. It has to be heard. I think it's time. I don't normally run from any issue. These guys on here will tell you I speak my mind. I say it like it is. And I think people are fed up. I think police have to be held accountable when they commit crimes. In George Floyd's case, when they commit murder, they need to be punished. But I also think there has to be reform within the police department. I think there's got to be reform in our country. Injustice, social injustice has to change. I don't know if we will change everyone's opinion. If you still don't have the opinion that kneeling is disrespectful and somehow you're disrespecting the flag, I don't think we'll change those people's minds. But I do think enough people, I even think the NFL now realizes exactly what Kaepernick was trying to make a statement for. And I think that's the message that can't get lost. And oftentimes it's about the flag, which it never was about. It's about soldiers. And listen, I've got family members who served. I've got friends that are in law enforcement. I totally understand what comes with those jobs. It's, and the dangers that come with policing, I get it. But when police step across the line, we got to hold them accountable. And they're here to protect and serve supposedly us. And that's what we got to get to.
Past weekend, you marched and protested in Richmond, Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
You marched past statues of slave owners and glorified Confederate soldiers. What do those symbolize to you? And what message do you have to people who don't want to see those statues torn down?
Listen, I know the history of the United States, and they were on the wrong side of history. And for a long time, they used that as a scare tactic to keep minorities, Black folks especially, in place. And, you know, they got to go. And, you know, if you want to put them in a museum, I've heard that people say put them in a museum, then put them in a museum. But when I marched and when we rallied in Richmond, it was about coaches for change in the 804, where I'm from, the Central Region. And it was beautiful because on Monument Avenue, where all those Confederate soldiers statues are, at the very end is a statue of Arthur Ashe. And we assembled in front of that statue, and we walked to this Jeb Stuart statue, and that statue's coming down. So that to me symbolized the change and the progress that we're hoping to make, where we could do it and talk about social injustice and pouring back into the youth of the city. And to do that in front of the Ashe Monument for what he stood for, what he had to go through. I mean, he's a son of the Commonwealth. He's from Richmond. So I know that history. And for what he stood for, being able to walk from there to kind of symbolize where we want to go was pretty positive.
Mm-hmm. Malcolm, nearly 4 years ago, Colin Kaepernick brought police brutality to the forefront with his protest. You were very outspoken at that time. Why?
You know, first, thank you for having me on. But for me, I think Kaepernick was shedding light on an issue that, you know, for hundreds of years now has been ignored in this country, in the world. And, you know, like Coach Williford said, I think it's reached its threshold where people are fed up. As a Black African-American community, I think we've sort of exhausted all of our resources on how to bring light to this issue. And now you see the looting, now you see the violence. This is when people have reached their wits' end, they have nothing else to turn to. Violence is going to be, you know, what happens. But then you have people that, you know, are angry about this, but they're also angry about Kaepernick kneeling. And that's peaceful, that's civil disobedience. That's actually what Dr. King preached. That's actually what Andrew Young and John Lewis and all these great Black civil rights leaders preached, was civil disobedience. That's what the sit-ins were when they were getting their heads beat in, when they were getting hosed and harassed. Of course, it was legal during that time, but it was civil disobedience. It was peaceful protests. And you have a lot of people now kneeling. Kaepernick started something that, you know, we didn't know would be this powerful. He honestly reminded us. He didn't start it. He reminded us, and now we're sort of picking up where he left off. So I think what he did was beautiful. I think it was, you know, for our generation, the beginning of something special again. And now what we're seeing, we're going to see something beautiful come out of this. We're going to see a lot of change. You know, yesterday the news came out that Minneapolis basically disbanded their, you know, police department. And, you know, a lot of people have talked about police reform. A lot of people have talked about defunding the police and not giving them as many assets and as much money. But Minneapolis now, the city council actually ruled to, you know, get rid of the police department. And we're going to see what comes out of that, hopefully amazing things. But that's the type of change we're looking for. People need to be held accountable, especially law enforcement. And that comes from police brutality. That comes from, you know, unjust acts, unjust rulings, the, you know, prosecutors in local cities, you know, giving young Black men, young Black children years and years in prison for, you know, having marijuana. I mean, stuff that is simply immoral and unethical that's going on in our country. I think now the light is starting to be shed on it, and I think it's, you know, only going to get better.
You took a courageous stance. Were you worried that the NBA was going to penalize you? And what type of backlash did you receive from fans?
No, I was not worried. You know, my grandfather, as some of you might have heard, marched in the civil rights movement, and it's something that I feel like I've been brought up to stand for my beliefs. I was named after Malcolm X, so that's my namesake, and that was He was a man that stood up for his religious beliefs. He educated himself. He stood strong no matter, what type of evil was facing him. And for me, I feel like my situation is a lot easier than what our ancestors, our grandfathers and parents went through. So I feel like I only have a right and a duty. They were fighting for our right to vote and all these huge sort of declarations. We're simply fighting to shed light and to continue to correct an issue. So I feel like it's a duty for Black men nowadays to stand up for what they believe in, especially if you have a platform and a voice. Speak, shed your light, speak your truth. That's how I've been raised, and that's how I continue to approach it. Of course, there's some backlash. There's always going to be fans. There's always going to be people that disagree with you. No matter if you're silent or if you're speaking, there are going to be people that disagree with you. So you might as well handle situations with your truth, and so you can look back 20 years from now and say, I'm happy about how I handled that situation. I was true to myself.
Hey, Mark, I want to just jump in as Malcolm saying that, and with Ty on, when the stuff happened here in Charlottesville, when Kaepernick, all that stuff was going on, I often talked about the issues, but I never acted on it. And I want to say thank you to Malcolm and Ty and Kyle Guy and all of those guys who have put voice to the issue and gone on social media and put themselves out there, but have also acted upon it. They inspired me to actually do what I did Saturday. And I got confidence and I felt convicted that I needed to do something. We often talk to our guys about our pillars, about all, our 5 pillars, unity and passion being one. And it was burning in me that, all right, enough talking, go do something and help be a part of change. And so Malcolm, I thank you. I sent a text to both you and Justin telling you to continue your leadership, and I appreciated that because you definitely inspired me, and I want to be more active. So this generation, y'all's generation, you hit it on the head. I hope that something positive and good comes from this, and I think it's different this time. At least I feel that way. It seems that way, and I want this to continue.
I'm going to ask that question shortly, but I want to ask Ty. Nearly 3 years ago in Charlottesville, the neo-Nazis marched downtown Charlottesville and on the grounds UVA. We were in Vermont, and you sent out a couple of tweets, and you made the comments that Trump was enabling the neo-Nazi party to behave the way they were behaving and marching, and felt like that they had the power to do this. And some of the backlash you got, did you expect that? Where people were basically telling you what LeBron was told by Laura Ingraham and other people to shut up and dribble.
100%. I think it was a bunch of different reasons, right? I think the first reason is that a lot of people don't know I'm Black, right? So a lot of people's first reaction is, "Oh, you're not Black. What are you doing? Why are you speaking up about it?" Which is ignorant for a multitude of reasons, right? And I think number 2 is I would expect it because just how many, like Jay Willie said in the beginning, right? How many people were not going to change their minds, no matter what you do, no matter what you say. And those are those blind Trump supporters who are just racist, without even knowing it, right? Even whether they're openly racist or they don't believe they're racist, but like the incident we had the other day, which we'll talk about in a little bit, I guess. But so I definitely expected it because those blind Trump supporters are not going to change their mind, and just having people are openly racist now.
So we had an incident the other day, and I was once again proud of you and your brother and your reaction. Can you share what happened?
So we're in a gym working out, and I guess it was not the guy's gym, right? Or some guy that was in the gym. I don't know who the guy is, but so we're in a gym working out, and after I finished working out, I guess 4 or 5 kids?
5 or 6 kids in the gym.
5 or 6 kids walked in the gym after, and it was a team. And I guess one of the white dudes, I guess one of his sons was on the team, I guess, or working out with them or something like that. and he starts talking to me, my brother, me, Kobe, and my dad about three of the black kids on the team, and basically just talking about them like they're not there, and they're hearing it, and he's like, they're so they come from terrible backgrounds, and this is so good for them, and they're being so good for my son, almost like they weren't human beings, almost like they weren't there. So just like that guy, he's the prime example of like just in his daily life, just not without even know. I don't even know if he knows it, right? I don't know what type of person he is. I don't know. But it's a prime example of just a dude being racist, and you don't know how it's affecting those kids, and that's what those kids are around every day.
And I think the issues that were, and there are different levels of racism, different layers. And this guy was saying these kids have nothing, and because of him and because of what he does for them, now they have something in their life, right? And he didn't understand that the relationship, the dynamic that he had created was now transactional and very controlling, right? It's similar to that slave master mentality. So afterwards, we walked out the gym, and again, you and your brother, for me, was another proud moment, said to me, Dad, that guy was so racist, like talking about those kids as if they were in a museum. And I just tuned it out basically at that point. And I thought about the whole day, and I thought about the next day, and I thought about the message for me to you guys and the importance of educating. And I'm so used to it because it happens so often. But at this point, I said, you know what? I have to do something about this. So I wrote a long text to the guy whose gym it was, who's a friend of the guy who made the comments. And he called me within a minute and a half and said, I read it twice. I'm so sorry. I hope you don't group me with that guy. I will relay the message. And I felt like when we open our mouths and we communicate, sometimes we can make a difference, right? I don't think we always can, but sometimes we can. And I think you experienced both. I think you experienced, and Malcom and Jay and all of us, where we sometimes don't want to deal with it. But sometimes it's important for us too to educate people. And the only way we're going to make changes is by communicating, right? And if we don't, then sometimes it may be irresponsible, right? Because we've lost an opportunity to say something. Malcom, why do you think people are protesting so much now? Why do you think changes are on the horizon?
I think similar to what I said earlier, I think people are sort of have reached their wits' end. I also think I think it's right now, part of what we're seeing with the protesting and the looting is we're on in the middle of, and hopefully the back end of COVID, in the back end of a pandemic. People, white, black, it's more of I think COVID affects more of a socioeconomic class. In turn, it affects more of the black community. But whoever is not making as much money, whoever, is really going to be injured by not receiving those checks, that coupled with, what's going on and the killings, I think it's reaching an all-time high. So I think COVID has definitely made the situation worse and definitely accelerated it. But I think people, the black community especially, are at their wits' end. I've had a lot of people reach out to me to get on conversations and to have conversations about this. And I've heard a lot of friends and a lot of families say, we're done with the conversations. We need action. We need solutions. But I still think there's room for education. Similar to that story you just said, I think there's plenty of room for education. There are people, and what I was thinking about, that story, there's so many things you can draw from that story. You guys drew, sort of this dehumanizing perspective that white people or anybody of a higher class can have on someone that they think is inferior. When I was listening to that story, I was thinking about white privilege, this idea of privilege, this idea of thinking you're better than people, but also not even knowing how privileged you are, not even understanding, not even having the perspective of understanding what you're saying, who you're talking to, and sort of how you're speaking down to people. But I think that's a very privilege is something that, I was going to bring it up later in the conversation, but that's exactly what I was thinking about during this conversation. And it has such a huge impact on what's going on. And, you meet a lot of white people now that are uncomfortable with the issue and want to talk about it. Some of them don't. But honestly, I think there are a big population of them that know what's going on, but are uncomfortable, but then the ones that don't, they're operating by privilege. Most of the time when you're privileged, you don't actually know you have the privilege. And just like you said about racism, there are multiple levels of it. There's multiple levels of privilege. So you look at me and Ty. Me and Ty are privileged. I'm black, Ty's black. We're both privileged though. We're NBA players. So when Ty gets pulled over in Phoenix by the cops, I get pulled over in Indy. A lot of the time they're going to know who we are and we won't actually get a ticket. But other black people that aren't in our position are going to get that ticket, are going to even be killed, like we've seen. So I think it's partly understanding where you stand in society, how privileged you are, sort of what level you sit at, and then continuing to use your voice and educate people, because education is still key. I think education is key for white people, but it's also key for black men. There are a lot of black men that don't know the history, and we need to educate them so they can speak on the cause.
Absolutely.
And Mark, I'm going to jump in. I do think, I think they're very uncomfortable conversations, but my mother's white. For those who don't know, I'm a product of a biracial marriage. My mother's white, my dad's black. They lived in Richmond. Imagine being biracial in Richmond in the late 60s, early 70s. So I get it. I got it all the time. But I think conversations and checking people and calling them on it is what we have to do. I think all too often we were afraid to do that. Our silence was complicit. And I don't think you can be silent. And I don't see the young folk being silent anymore.
The Titus and Tate Show is the largest NCAA basketball podcast. Tate Frazier, who graduated from UNC a few years ago, is one of the hosts. Tate is now joining us as well. Tate, how are you? Thanks for coming on.
Hey, what's up, Mark? Appreciate you guys having me on. I've been sitting here listening for the past few minutes. It's great to hear Malcom. It's great to hear you speak. Everyone used to call you the president back in the day, and you're living up to the hype. So I'm happy to see that. And it's great. It's great to be here. And obviously, it's a in-depth conversation. I grew up in North Carolina, small town North Carolina. I've seen all this stuff growing up in my life, and I just want to be here to listen and talk. And it's great to be here. Great to be here with you guys.
Tate, you represent a younger demographic of social media experts.
Experts might not be the right term, but
You are.
something like that.
You absolutely are. Why did you feel the need to speak out? You've sent out a couple of tweets. You sent out a couple of messages that were very supportive of the movement.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I think as a white male, from the South, I am the face of what we're talking about, right? Of privilege. I benefited so much of my life being, a white male who's 6'2", who played sports, who was friendly, had a mom that was a teacher, had a dad that was a farmer. Would check all the boxes of, made it from whatever blue collar to North Carolina, white collar, living in LA now. And that's all, something that came from a perspective where, I went to public school my whole life till 5th grade. And then in 6th grade, I went to go play baseball at a private school. And I realized that there were a lot more white kids at the private school. It was all white kids, and there was not anyone else really. And that was interesting. I didn't really quite get that. And that was the first time I started to realize things. And then I went back to public school in high school. I was making straight A's. I was going to be valedictorian, all these sort of things. But I also had people saying, I was able to get away with certain things. And I was aware of all this going on as I got older. And I played basketball. I was, one of the few white kids on my team. I saw the way that my friends who, if they were well known, they would be treated differently, like a Raymond Dunn from my hometown, Henderson, North Carolina. If people knew Raymond, he would be fine. But if they didn't, he would be treated differently. That's wrong. And my mom is a first grade teacher, as I said. The rule is to treat everyone as you would like to be treated, to be nice. That is not what we've seen for 400 years. And, being in the South being, you can see it in church. I was a Baptist, First Baptist Church of Henderson, North Carolina. Churches are white and black. They are not integrated still in the South in some places. That's it. That's not fair. That's interesting. Why is that? And these are the things as I got older and I grew up, I started to see that. And I understood the magnitude of the moment, but I also didn't understand why it wasn't getting addressed. I remember watching Remember the Titans, a great movie, right? We see Denzel Washington as Herman Boone. He's this amazing coach, and the school gets integrated, and T.C. Williams wins the title. But the movie version isn't the real life version, right? And we all want the Disney version. And I think in public school, we get the Disney version of, Malcolm X. He was a little too mean, but Martin Luther came in and then he marched, and then we all came together and everything was great and gravy. That's not the truth, and I think we all want the Disney happy ending of this. And I think the world needs to have a real conversation. We all need to have a real conversation. And I think just it's something that I've witnessed a lot growing up being in North Carolina. And, everyone wants to be above it. Everyone wants to point to someone else and say, that's the problem. There is no amoeba that is the system. We are the system. It's like the NCAA. Everyone wants to point to the system. We're administrators and coaches and players and people are a part of the system. We're all a part of the system. And I point to myself. I want people to point to themselves more. And I think we can all grow and change together if we all point to ourselves.
You talk about pointing to yourself, and I can't remember a protest or a movement, a national movement across the country where I've seen so many young white people supporting a cause. And I don't think you speak for every young white person. Why do you think there's so many young white people who supported this?
I think it comes down to influence, right? And culture. And I think, it's interesting when you ask me who my hero was, right? My hero is a 6'6" Black man from Wilmington, North Carolina. I wanted to be Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan was he embodied everything to me. And I didn't look at him as any different than me. He was just the best basketball player in the world. And that's what I wanted to be. That's different. That's unique. And I think, people were very excited about Michael donating $100 million with Jordan Brand. I think that's amazing. But, I remember reading a Playboy article that he did in 1992, and he was talking about people being upset that he didn't do enough publicly, but he didn't want to be public about it because he wanted to be centrist enough so that some kid like me, born in 1993, wanted to be Michael Jordan. And, families still wanted their white kids to be like him because he was not going to toe the political line. And now we're past that point. We know what the line is. The line is right and wrong. And do you want to do right by people, or do you want to be on a side of not treating people correctly? And I think, that whole journey, right? Just for white people in America, having heroes that are Black males. I mean, whoever it may be, you can point to a million different iterations, whether, you could be from Little Washington, North Carolina, and Dominique Wilkins could be your hero. And he could, in your opinion, be the greatest dunker you've ever seen. And you think that he should have won the 1988 dunk contest. And that's your hero. And if your hero is an African-American male going through the African-American experience, why would you not try to listen to that plight? Why would you not want to understand and help and engage and understand where they're coming from? And I think that is what's happened in this generation, or at least I hope that's what's happening. I hope it's not a facade. I hope it's not a farce. I hope that people are genuine in what they're doing, because if your heroes have to go through something and they have to toe the line, if LeBron James can't speak from his heart because he's worried about losing money from his quote unquote fans, which I wouldn't call them fans, that's wrong. And I think that is what is happening with this generation. I think there are a lot of people that are my age that have had a lot of heroes that may not look like them, but they understand humanity and they understand who these people are and what they stand by. Will Smith, the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I mean, how many kids, steal a million things from him and act like they are the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, but they're little white kids from suburban towns. And I think that's where we're at. And I think it's a good thing. I hope that it is momentum for a future that is more in conjunction with one actual United Nations.
Jason and Malcolm, Drew Brees apologized. Jake Fromm apologized. The NFL has apologized. Why do you think these guys are apologizing now?
I don't know. I don't know their hearts, Mark. I got an idea why I think they're apologizing. I think for the players, I think it was a reaction to what fans and what other teammates had to say, and I don't know how sincere it is. We'll see. But I think it was because they got some negative feedback. That's my honest opinion. I think the NFL realizes they made a mistake, but what happens, what actions they take, and where they go from here remains to be seen. But that's my take on all three of those situations. I'll let Malcolm speak.
Yeah, I think a lot of the time people in desperate times and hectic situations, I think people show you who they are. I think they show you their true colors. I think Drew Brees did that, and I'm gonna take him on his word. That doesn't mean people can't gain a perspective and educate themselves and come back. But when people make comments like that, especially during times like this, you listen to them. And I think the NFL for years has been, a league that has not been for its players, has not been, the best to its players. You look at their, the contracts, you look at all the stuff that goes on with the NFL, it hasn't been the best environment for Black athletes. And, much like Coach just said, I think it's about the response they got. They got a negative response. I think these professional leagues, I think it's about money. And I think when you get a negative response like that around the nation, I think you realize it's going to hurt your money. And I think you do whatever you can at that point to protect it. So that's what I think about the situation. Of course, I think, I think some of the guys on this team are going to get back on board. You've heard them come out and, forgive him or protect him. The organization, the league is going to apologize, but, when people show you who they are, you got to trust them.
Malcolm, do you anticipate if anyone decides not to stand for the national anthem in the NBA, what the penalty might be?
Oh, I actually don't anticipate there being a penalty. I think the penalty will be your reputation being damaged with fans, which I think a lot of guys at this point won't care about. If you're choosing to do that, you don't care what the fans think. I think as far as the NBA, I think Adam Silver, honestly, I think he's as progressive as they come in terms of owners in the, around the world's leagues. I think he's been phenomenal, and I think he'll continue to be great and an advocate for the Black community and the Black players in the NBA. So I don't anticipate there being a negative response within the NBA for guys that kneel.
Ginny Boucek was a standout UVA student and basketball player. She then played professionally, and she's now one of the few women coaches in the NBA. She coaches for the Dallas Mavericks. Ginny had is planning to come on. There she is. Thanks for coming on, Ginny. How are you? Ginny, your mic's not on. Your mic's off. Thank you. There you go.
Hey, it's good to be here with my Wahoo fam. Jason, what's up? I have not seen you in forever. Jason
Mark,
and I were together.
Before I know we're talking issues and topics, but I have to say a warm hello to Jenny. It's been years. First of all, congrats on all that you've accomplished. So proud of you. Congrats on the new kid. Not so new. How old?
She'll be 2 in July. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. All right. And listen, continue success. Keep up the good work. I just want to say hello before Mark. He's gonna throw something tough at you, I know. But I'd be remiss not to say hi. It's been way too long.
Yeah. It's great seeing you, Jason.
Same here.
Ginny, how has sports shaped your vision of integration and thoughts about race?
I grew up playing basketball and it was my favorite sport. And I'm so thankful for that because I think there's so many things that become very intuitive to us as basketball players with people from all different backgrounds, socioeconomic, race, religion, international. And you're fortunate to earn trust, respect, relationship, where you can understand and listen and realize that these differences don't matter. And I think you also learn through team sports just what a team is, which is there's beauty and there's benefit in diversity. And we all know that on the deepest level. I think also it's exposed me to seeing all this racism. I mean, I grew up in a white neighborhood, but I was in public schools and playing basketball my whole life in the South. My teammates hiding from the Ku Klux Klan on the way to games, you know, and then going to Virginia where all my, you know, a lot of my teammates were Black and my best friends, and seeing the racism that they experience on a daily basis. And I feel like, yes, that's a blessing to me as a white person that I've gotten to see that my whole life. So I know it's real and none of this surprises me. And so I'm very thankful for sports that it has exposed me and enabled me to not be as ignorant and as blind as a lot of white people are. Some of them just don't know. They've never had Black friends. They've never been around Black people. They've never had honest conversations with people who trust, been able to ask the questions that I've been able to ask and be, you know, exposed to an understanding and an empathy, and then to see it firsthand. I mean, I've never been pulled over by a cop in my life, except when I have Black people in my car and I get pulled over. You know, I could give you example after example. I know that you guys have way more examples than I do, but I've got enough examples to know that this stuff is very real. And the fights that I have continually with white people in my family around me, it gets to the point where even as a white person, you start to feel hopeless. Like what's going to change this? Because so many white people are just in complete denial that racism still exists in our country. So while these things that have happened with George Floyd and everything are horrific, we all know they've been going on forever. This has been going on for 400 years. So the fact that it's finally blowing up on the heels of this pandemic, when people are worn down, I feel like it's God allowing this to happen so that it can finally be dealt with. And 2020 can be a year of vision. It can be 2020 vision for our nation, because the first step is realizing this happening and bringing these tough conversations to the table. And I know the hopelessness that I felt as a white person, it starts to feel like this is not going to change. And I feel like this is a real opportunity for all of us to do our part together and really activate and be a catalyst of some way long overdue change.
So Malcolm,
Mark, Jenny, it's interesting you say that. You guys probably saw my wife sneak in here behind me earlier, but my wife, I felt the same hopelessness, and my wife said, and I kept saying I was frustrated, I was angry, I was mad, and I kept saying I just don't see where anything has changed. And
Yep.
And she said to me, there have been changes. Although we've got a long way to go, there are changes. You can't keep saying that. You got to give hope to our boys. I got a 13-year-old, a 10-year-old, and trying to explain to them what's going on, helping them understand their feelings. And so when I look at TV and it's going across the country, that it's our Black folks that are marching, and Black Lives Matter and all of those groups, but it's a whole lot of young white folk.
Absolutely. And we have to do that.
I shouldn't say young, Jenny. I mean, there's a lot of people that feel empathy towards us, and that I think want to see change. So it brought me some hope. And
I'm more optimistic than ever. I'm excited. I mean, as horrific as this stuff has been, I'm excited that this is a real opportunity for change. And I know as a woman who's been in a lot of environments where I'm a minority, only one in the room, I've experienced, you know, all the isms that come along with that. And I know if it hadn't been for men, there's things I can't say as a woman when I'm the only woman in the room and there's stuff going on. And I've needed men to speak up for me and advocate for me and give me opportunities and say the things that I can't say, where it's going to just sound like a woman pulling the woman card and whining or making excuses. Whereas we as white people have to do that for y'all. You know, there are things that we can say to other white people that you can't say, you know, and we can stand up in ways that are different than ways that you can stand up. And most of the guys that have stood up for me have been Black men. They're the biggest supporters of women's basketball, women coaching men. The players have been so supportive. And so, you know, anything that I can do, and I know, and I speak for a lot of people that I know, white people, we have to partner with you guys and do our part and do some things that y'all can't do in the white community. Say the things that y'all can't say and really partner and team up with you guys.
Jenny, that goes a long way. I appreciate that. And we just got to keep holding each other and everyone accountable. So thanks for that.
Absolutely.
Malcom, do we dismiss the ultra racists who have no interest in having communication with people who want to make change?
You know, I don't think anybody's dismissed from the conversation, but you know, I think you get to a point to where you can be so radical, really on either side. You can be so radical or so extreme that you know, your opinion holds very, very little weight. So I mean, I think those people are good to keep in mind, to know that those people are still out there, and to know that they're, you know, not everybody's going to be able to you know, sort of get on the trend or get on the side of the Black community and support. But of course, I think at a certain point you have to ignore those people. I think you do have to continue to push forward, because at the end of the day, you know, I don't know if it's going to be in 5 years, if it's going to be in 5 months, if it's going to be another 500 years, they're going to be the minority. There are going to be very little of those people that are standing alone. So, you know, and I think it's going to change quick. I think we're seeing right now the changes. I think we're seeing it change. It's going to be small. It's going to be, you know, we're not going to make huge gains in the next couple months, but, you know, we have an opportunity to start the momentum.
Yep. Jenny, I just saw you holding your baby. Beautiful, by the way. It brings up a thought to me, and I've seen this recently in articles, and I experienced at a young age myself. When is it too early to start talking about racism with your child?
Yeah, it's a good question. You know, she's just now starting to be verbal. I think the first thing, I mean, actions always speak louder than words. These kids are watching everything that we do and how we treat people. And, you know, my daughter already is talking to homeless people on the street, Black, white, old, young, giving them some of her snacks. And so I think modeling it is the most important thing as they're very young, is modeling kindness and respect to all people. You know, that's one of the blessings of being a part of professional sports, is since the day she was born, she's been looked after by these NBA guys, and she's been exposed to them and they've loved on her. She doesn't have a father figure in her life. I did this through a donor by myself. I've been married to my career. A lot of you guys know my story, but to have these guys take her under the wing and just love on her, that's the first thing, is she's experiencing the love, you know, real agape love. But we've already started talking about, I was wearing my equity shirt from the NBA the other day, and she was pointing to some of the words and everything. And we're already starting to talk about, you know, loving everybody. And we'll start talking about it as soon as she shows me signs of being ready. I think they can never be too young. They see and are aware of way more than we give them credit for. And we need to get out in front in educating them.
It was a great memory for me. As far as I can remember, I was on my dad's shoulders while he was leading protests. I don't know if I was 4 or 5 or whatever age I was.
Yeah, we're going tomorrow morning.
Grateful.
We're going tomorrow morning. So at least she has those pictures in her head, but you know, it has to be organic. You know, there's been as many Black people spending the night at my house loving on her as white people. That's to me more real than anything I could say to her, is her experiencing, you know, like I said, like genuine organic relationships with people that are the same, different, you know, whatever, and her just seeing people are people.
Yep. The Civilian Complaint Review Board is a national organization that monitors police complaints and investigates them. Fred Davey is the chairman of the New York City, which covers the 5 boroughs, Civilian Complaint Review Board here. Fred, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It's good to be here, Mark. Thanks for having me, and hello to all your guests.
How many complaints do you receive per year?
So we receive in excess of 6,000 complaints per year that we can actually act on. We get a lot more than that, but some of those fall outside the jurisdiction of the agency. Let me just say a word about the agency. At the top, I'll say we are the agency that prosecuted Daniel Pantaleo in a departmental trial. You know, Officer Daniel Pantaleo, it was responsible for the death of Eric Garner on Staten Island. And after the Staten Island DA and the US Justice Department took a pass, our agency, the Civilian Complaint Review Board, was the last stop for any justice for the Garner family. We brought charges, which is one of our responsibilities, against Officer Pantaleo. We took him to a departmental trial. We prosecuted him. The trial judge agreed with us and found him guilty. We recommended the penalty of termination. Again, the trial judge agreed with us and also recommended termination. All of that was put before the former commissioner, Commissioner O'Neill, in New York City, and Commissioner O'Neill terminated Officer Pantaleo. But for the CCRB, the Civilian Complaint Review Board, that would not have happened. Quick word about who we are. Founded in 1993 in its current form by none other than the first Black mayor of New York City, David Dinkins. After 2 incidents, one where the police in Tompkins Square Park in New York City engaged in, at best, what could be called excessive, unacceptable behavior when clearing the park. That led to about a 5-year conversation about what to do about civilian oversight of policing in New York City. And then right as David Dinkins got close to getting this board to be all civilian and this agency to be all civilian, there was a near police riot at City Hall that was promoted then by the police unions, by the PBA. But in the end, the city council prevailed. They created an all civilian review board for the New York City Police Department. There are 13 of us, soon to be 15. I won't get into all those details. There are about 200 employees. About half of them are investigators. We train them well. People can file a complaint by dialing 311, by going online, by calling the office, by visiting the office once the social distancing is lifted. And then we take the complaint. The board has subpoena power. We can compel people to testify. We can compel the gathering of evidence. We gather that evidence and we can make a decision as to whether an officer has violated. We have jurisdiction over 4 areas: excessive force, abuse of authority, discourtesy, and offensive language. And we can make a decision as to whether or not, and the complaint that has been submitted has actually violated one of those 4 areas. In the case of Officer Pantaleo, it was excessive force, the application of force to the neck of Eric Garner that led to his death. Since the demonstrations in New York, we have a month's worth of complaints over about 5 days. So we're close to 500, 600 complaints over about 90 different incidents involving New York City police officers. We've committed to investigating those complaints with timeliness, thoroughness, and fairness, but we will investigate them. And if any officers have been found to have violated excessive force, abuse of authority, discourtesy, or offensive language, we will substantiate those claims and we will recommend discipline for them to the police commissioner.
There are some people who truly believe that it's just a few bad eggs. That's number 6,000 or so. Does that represent a fraction? And that's a large number, by the way. I think we can all agree. Does that number represent a fraction of the number of complaints that there are in New York City that
Well,
don't?
yeah, I mean, yeah.
report it to you?
First of all, people in New York City don't know. Too many people don't know the CCRB. I'm sorry, Mark. You're going to ask a question.
No, that was my question. Go ahead.
Yeah. So too many people don't know the organization, and it's been around for 27 years. So we're making a huge effort now. The Pantaleo case actually obviously helped, the Eric Garner case, so that the people of New York City know that this resource is available to them. So we're doing extensive outreach. We hold community meetings. We work with community-based organizations to educate them about the agency. So we do get a fraction of probably what are many more unfavorable interactions between members of the New York City Police Department and civilians in the city. 52% of the current force, as I recall, have at least one complaint lodged against them with the CCRB. Only about 8% have a substantiated claim against them. Now, a claim can have multiple parts to it. So you can have dozens of charges within a single claim. But we're working to make sure that more people know about this agency, more people take advantage of using it in order to hold members of the NYPD accountable, to have serious civilian oversight, and just to ensure that the interaction between members of the public and the NYPD is what we all really want it to be and what it should be, what people should expect it to be.
Thanks, Fred. Fred, feel free to stay
Hey,
on.
Mark,
Go ahead.
I want to ask Fred a question. Thanks for coming on.
Sure.
I've heard defund the police quite a bit.
Yep.
Would you say that's the right thing to do, or should there be more funding for proper training, better training? What would be, I guess,
Sure.
how could we help, or what do we need to do for there to be better officers and better community relations?
Sure. So I want to focus on two things. One is, I think we can redirect some of the resources at the NYPD, as Mayor de Blasio has suggested. And by the way, I'm appointed as chair by the mayor and now the speaker of the city council under some changes in the charter. But I think that we can redirect some funds from the NYPD's budget to support other kinds of social services and community and youth and community programs. I think the NYPD, the officers are probably doing things that are better done by the nonprofit or the social service sector. And I think it's important for the city, for the mayor, for the city council, for other public officials to examine that budget, and where those funds can be redirected responsibly, that can be done. Related to that is the need for ongoing implicit bias training. I mean, anybody who believes that bias has been rooted out of the police department or many other of our agencies and institutions in this country simply aren't being realistic. This thing has been going on for a long time. Police forces for the longest time were used to enforce racial order and enforce social order. And that means keeping people who look like me in their place. Now, we are trying to evolve beyond that. And there are lots of us committed to helping departments evolve beyond that, but we have to be truthful about what's going on. And the truth is there is systemic bias, and it continues to be in these departments. The New York City Police Department is not immune to this, and we have to address it. One final thing. There is now, before the New York State Legislature, an effort to repeal a law that keeps the disciplinary records of police officers private in New York State and New York City. That has got to change. That law is called 50A. So if you want to help, and I don't think I'm getting in any trouble by asking you to do this, if I am, we'll deal with it on the other side. You can be in touch with the state legislature. They're probably going to vote tomorrow and just simply say 50A needs to be repealed. There are enough protections that will guard officers' personal privacy such that we should not, as an agency, be prevented from letting the public know what the final discipline is as it relates to officers who have complaints substantiated against them by this agency. So let's repeal 50A, let's deal with bias in the system, and let's redirect some resources from the NYPD budget to social service and community-based organizations and allow them to do some of the things that perhaps the NYPD should not be doing.
And that would be for our New York audience. How many chapters around the country does the CCRB have?
Oh my God. So every municipality can, CCRBs are independent. There's a national organization called the National Association of Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement, NACOLE, N-A-C-O-L-E. And I would encourage people to just go to their website and you can get a sense of how many civilian oversight agencies there are in the nation that have civilian oversight for police departments. I will say that we all need to be strengthened even more. We need to have more resources. Some of our decisions need to be more binding, but it's a good start. And we're gonna use this momentum of the moment to ensure that the one in New York City is strengthened, and we hope our colleagues around the country will do the same thing.
Thanks very much, Fred. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on, and thanks again to all your guests and all you do.
Take care.
All right.
Wally Walker played at UVA during the mid-'70s. He then went on to become an NBA player for the Portland Trail Blazers and Seattle Supersonics. He later became the president and CEO of the Supersonics. Wally is now joining us, or will shortly be joining us, hopefully.
I hope I'm on.
There he is. How are you, Wally?
Great.
Thanks for coming on.
Good to see his esteemed group.
You fit right in.
Wally.
I don't know Tate, but I've seen Jason and Malcom recently, but Jenny, it's been way too long. Great to see you.
Way too long. I've got to get back. I kind of rebelled when Debbie was changed out, but I got to let things go.
Okay, I know. Well, let me know when you get back up here, would you please?
I will.
Jenny was the
Good
coach in the Seattle Storm, so we were together there for many years. She did a great job for us.
Great connection.
Wally, I like the beard.
Do you? I was checking you out the other day. I watched one of your broadcasts. I'm thinking, okay, I hope it's in style. Maybe they're coming back for some of us. I haven't had one before, and I've taken a little flack. The only flack I care about is here on the home front, though. That hasn't been too severe yet.
Looks good.
Thank you.
Wally, what was your initial experience with race in sports? And how did that shape your vision?
Yeah, I was from a small town, college town, all white high school, but I would go down to the college and play. And before I had done anything at the high school level, hadn't even made the high school varsity, I went and played with the college guys. Most of them were black from Philadelphia or Chester, from down in southeastern Pennsylvania. They let me play. And they mentored me, helped me in a way that they saw something in me before I saw something in myself. And I've never really fully repaid the debt. I just told one of the guys named Ernie Lowe how much he helped me, how I never would have made it without his help. That was 50 years ago. Remember, this is late 60s, early 70s. We were just burning down cities then, too, after Martin Luther King got assassinated in '68. So it was a time of racial strife. And these guys took me under their wing in a way they didn't have to. I'm just showing up at the gym. Took a while before they threw me the ball now. I wasn't quite ready for that, but then that came a little later. But they helped me, and I've never forgotten that. And again, if I can in any little way repay what they did for me, I'd love to do that.
You brought up 1968, when Martin Luther King was assassinated. How do you think things have changed since then? And do you think there's some social media and video that's helped change things? I mean, when you talk about 68, you're talking about Vietnam, right? And Vietnam, during that time, cameras and video and on the news, that changed some things for people during the Vietnam protests.
It did. It helped, and I think it spawned, some of what happened in '68, but some of that was due to the racial tensions too. I don't know. I defer to people on this panel, particularly the men who have experienced discrimination, racial profiling in a way I never have. I don't want to profess here I've ever walked in any of your shoes, but I have observed some things, and some of that's from being in the NBA. And my Black teammates, friends, colleagues have told me some things, and I've heard progress is made. I've been really interested in what Jason said. He maybe isn't feeling it, but some others are telling him maybe there is some, but I would defer to you all. But I do know this, in my conversations with my friends, now we're talking about a lot of them are 60-year-old, white guys, and they want to help. And to Malcolm's point, I've asked Malcolm this question. They want to talk about it before, and they recognize maybe there's an issue, but now it's what can I do? What actions can I take? And I'll give you one anecdote if we have a minute, because I had a debate a couple of years ago about Colin Kaepernick. It wasn't even a debate. It was a friend of mine saying, I don't agree with that. That's wrong. And I said, here's the issue. My friends in the NBA say the racial profiling is real. You and I get pulled over. We see the flashing lights. We're worried about, can we talk our way out of this ticket? And maybe if we can't, our insurance rates are going up. These guys have told me stories that they're worried it's a life or death matter. In this country at this time, fast forward to last week, after what's happened has happened, and it's at the forefront with Mr. Floyd's death. He called me. He didn't say this 2 years ago when we had a discussion. He said, you changed my mind. You changed the way I looked at it by what you told me about what happened with your teammates and colleagues decades ago. So my reaction to that is, even in a little way, we can all help. And if we can communicate and talk about injustices that we see, as Jenny said, amongst just our white friends, maybe we do have an impact. Some of us are doing big things. Malcolm, you always have. And, we need those. God knows we need those. But those of us who can help in little ways too, we just need to keep doing it.
But Wally, that was a conversation. And I think those conversations have to be had. And just that conversation, and then unfortunately him having to see what happened to George Floyd, changed his mind. So if that can change his mind or his stance on what he thought Kaepernick was doing, having those conversations are meaningful, and we have to continue to have those.
Well, and the willingness to act now after seeing what happened with Mr. Floyd, I think it is a sea change from the conversation we had before. And he's a talented, capable guy, the guy I had a conversation with means. So we're going to keep talking about what should happen and ways of taking action.
Yep. I posted something on Facebook the other day, and I'm not on Facebook a lot. I actually recently have been, and talking about reform and things that need to happen. And one is these guys, these murderers, the police that kill, they cannot be acquitted any longer. They need to serve lengthy prison terms, right? That was one. And I posted 3 things. The second is, when they commit murder and the victims' families are paid, that money comes from us. That's taxpayers' money, right? And you can look around the city, and you look at Minneapolis, what happened a couple of years ago. This white woman was killed by the police I think she was originally from Australia. Her family got $20 million, right? When Castilla's family, when Castilla, Philandro Castilla was killed, his family got $3 million. And we can talk about whether or not a Black person's value is the same as a white person's on another time. But there's so many cases like that. And that doesn't even include the harassment cases and the false arrest cases, like when I was falsely arrested and how much money I got. We are responsible for that. And until the police union or the PBA is responsible for that, it's another reason that why people are not going to, police are going to continue to feel like they can continue this behavior. The third thing I said was, when there's a complaint, right? Derek Chauvin had, 15, 16, 17 complaints against him before he committed murder. When there's a complaint and it's investigated and it's discovered that this person was in the wrong, immediately they should be terminated without a pension, right? A lot of times these guys are terminated and they're reassigned, right? If you look at what happened recently I think it was the Buffalo case where they pushed down this 75-year-old white man, a couple of cops. I saw a headline today that they're going to be, that there's, I think somewhere in Florida has offered to hire them, right? That can't happen. There's going to still be this feeling of empowerment amongst the police officers if there's no retribution that they're responsible for, right? And if there's no jail time and if they can just continue to get away with this. Malcom, how do these reforms, and what reforms do you suggest? How are these reforms made and implemented?
I think police reform is one of the biggest. I think it's one of the many types of reforms that have to come about. I also think voting reform has to come about. I think there are a lot of people in the Black community that see voting as hopeless at this point because you have the Electoral College, you have so many checks and balances that can overrule the popular vote. So if Obama ran for president again, and the Black community really comes out and votes for him, and he wins the popular vote, people are afraid that the Electoral College will come in and sway the vote a different way, or the vote will just be rigged and they'll go back and recount it, because we've seen that in past vote elections. So I think there needs to be reform on both sides, and we need to somehow take the votes out of people's hands after they're submitted, whether it's a centralized voting system, something like that. As far as police reform, that was actually, his name was Davey, who was just on the phone.
Fred Davey.
It was super informative. He talked about, sort of redirecting those funds to community groups, nonprofits that can do a better job with those services. That's exactly what I think needs to happen. I think the city council in Minneapolis did exactly what needs to happen. I don't know if it's going to stick, and we're going to see in due time. But past police reform, these law enforcement needs to be built from the ground up again, retrained, rebuilt, and just reevaluated. And it's one thing to go through all these policemen and try to figure out the bad eggs and get them out. But why not, rebuild all of it? Why not get rid of the system? And this isn't an ideal world, but get rid of the entire system and then go back, retrain them, and then select again and make sure you're picking the right ones. That's sort of what I envision in an ideal world. But of course, police reform, reallocating those funds, that's definitely a start.
Tate, the social media is extremely influential. What is their responsibility? What's the responsibility of journalists and social media when it comes to social justice and movements and causes like this?
Well, I mean, you mentioned social media. I think, journalism, the estate itself and the press and the importance of the press, I feel like that is almost now a nostalgic topic, right? I mean, it is Malcom mentioned earlier, we're all fighting for information as to what is the correct information and what is the right information. And that battle in and of itself is a compromised battle. But as a journalist, as a young person, as anyone that is online and has a platform, your responsibility is to purport the truth, and your responsibility is to also be compassionate, empathetic, to be someone who understands the human condition, to understand these are not objects, subjects, whatever you want to call it. These are people, these are human beings. This is a world that we are all reporting on and living in together. It is not about ratings or clicks or any of this other stuff. I mean, that's sort of I've seen that frustration right with the social media with the black squares that were posted and things like that came out, and the frustration is obviously right in a sense, where going and posting does not necessarily, it is not an act in and of itself. Yes, it's great to see. We want to see support, but there are necessary steps. And I've seen a lot of people. The New Yorker had a great cartoon that, some people need cartoons to point these things out. This is just the beginning, right? This is originally the moniker was the revolution will not be televised. Well, now it is. Everything is televised. Everything is on camera. Everything should be, visible to the people so everyone can make their own, informed opinions on things. And I think that's what the best case scenario for social media, that's what it will be. And we hope to get there. And I think if anything, eyes are being opened and people are seeing more than they've ever seen before. And I think, you mentioned Vietnam, right? I mean, 1968, that's what happened with television. It happened before with fireside chats. Once we had the president speaking on the air, on the radio for people to hear, people were learning more about the government and what was going on, and therefore opinions were formed. And now we see more things, and more people can obviously grow and hopefully change. And I think that's the last thing I will say is it's not wrong to become more informed and change your opinion or grow into a better informed person. And I don't think that's a bad thing. And I don't think we should ever knock anyone for growing into or admitting a fault or a blind spot, because we're not all perfect. We're all human, and we can all grow and be better.
I think one of the frustrations when we talk about the movement and social justice is that we protest and we demonstrate when something happens, and then all of a sudden there's a hard stop. I don't want to say hard stop. Let me take that back, because there's still a lot of people who fight every day, right? Including my family, including Malcom. You're very outspoken about it, and Jay Willie, we've had some conversations, and Ginny, you seem to be very passionate about this. All of you. How do we ensure that this continues, and to continue to put pressure on lawmakers to make changes? Jay Willie, Ginny, Wally, please.
I'll piggyback off of what Malcom said, and I do think this time is different. I think there is momentum, but I think you got to vote. I think you vote people, and not just presidential elections. I think you vote on a local level and at home mayoral races. You vote city council. You vote school board. But you vote people who have your interest. I would never tell anyone how to vote, who to vote for, but if they're candidates that have your interest in mind and who are about change, that can change legislation, change laws, you vote those people in. And if folks aren't doing what the masses want, you got to vote them out, and you put people in that have a moral backbone. And I think that's what this country's missing.
Wally, Jimmy.
Yeah, I had a conversation today. A friend of mine runs a private equity firm, and they have a small intern program. And he said, hey, for the first time, I'm saying to my people, we've got to recruit interns of color. We're not opposed to it in the past, but now we're going to actively recruit interns of color to give them a start, give them a look at a private equity business. That's a change. If we do some of that every day, or someone realizes this is an opportunity they have in their own business to provide an opportunity, then we've done something.
Ginny, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I agree with what everybody's saying. Like Wally's saying, we all have a sphere of influence depending on what your role is. And we just need to use this opportunity right now. Just like when you're playing basketball, you run the play, you wait for your opportunity, but when it comes, you got to attack. You got to take advantage of it. You can't miss the moment. And we have a moment right now in all of our different spheres of influence that we need to be very proactive with. For me, it's raising my daughter a certain way. It's as I work with young Black men, and I worked in the WNBA for 20 years with Black women, not just having conversations, but equipping them for leadership roles as well. I saw for years in the WNBA, my former athletes that I'd coached, Black athletes, being put in token coaching positions. And I'm sure Jason sees it a lot in college. I don't know if it's still going on a lot, but never really taught how to be a head coach, just kept in a role to recruit and get along with the players. And so just my active role in trying to equip them to be a head coach and to see themselves with that potential and not box themselves in based on previous biases and preconceived notions. So we all have our role. We're working as a coaches association in the NBA we have an equity movement going on since last year for women and minority coaches to get more opportunities. It's long overdue in the NBA. There's no reason we should have so few Black head coaches and GMs. And so now we're trying to do our part, and this is just going to escalate that. So whatever your sphere of influence is, there's a moment right now that we can't let pass. And it can't just be a fleeting moment, as we've mentioned on this call, where it's just a trend right now and we let it go, and continue to have the conversations with the people in your sphere of influence that disagree, don't see it, challenge people, you know, to see things with a little bit different perspective and look at it through different eyes. And I think as we chip away, as Wally said, a little bit at a time, we all do our part, then we can really hopefully make this a lasting change.
I would agree that diversity, recruitment and diversity is really important. I also think what's really important is also education equality. And in New York City, schools are extremely segregated, where you have schools in certain neighborhoods where you have to go through police detectors when you walk into the building, right? Versus other schools where you walk in, where there's 15 or 20 people in a classroom and there's tons of resources, versus the other schools where there's 35 kids in the classroom and it's so hard to learn. And that has to be an important place too, where changes are made to create equality. And I'm not sure how to tackle that. I'm not sure how to get it started, but that has to happen to create an overall level playing field, right? I also think we have to have 3 of the most important characteristics are compassion, respect, right? Or those 2, let me start there. And empathy, I'm sorry. And if we can have those towards each other, I think we can learn a lot from each other, right? And we can continue to grow, and we can continue to teach, and we can continue to educate. So I'd love to hear one last word from all of you. And this is a great UVA family with an addition in Tate. So we appreciate you, Tate. You're an adopted member from now on. You're a lifelong adopted member. So Jay Willie, please let me have a parting shot.
Well, I'll leave it at this. And my message when I was in Richmond Saturday was just to love on each other and pour into our athletes, in particular at that coaches march. It was to just spread love, and your words are right on point, Mark. We got to try to somehow change hearts, and I think if we can change hearts, then we can change the world. So it starts there.
Tate.
Yeah, like I said, I appreciate you including me in the UVA family. I'm happy to be here, and I will keep it simple. I think, you know, we live in a world where the moniker is to love yours, and I think that's a beautiful mantra. We should always love yours, love your family, love who you have in your life. But I think we should love ours. I think we should love who we are and who we know and who we exist and coexist with. And I think that's I hope we get to a world where we can all ELE, everybody love everybody.
Jenny.
First of all, you know, I've been really proud, Jason, of you for a long time. I mean, I've always just known the character that you had since we were together at UVA. And Malcom, I've been a huge fan of yours from afar, as a basketball player, but even more so as a man. And much respect to you, young man. Anything I can do to help you as someone in the Wahoo family, NBA family, anything, please don't hesitate. It's an honor just to be on this call with you guys. And just, I hope we can all just keep a mindset of problem solving, you know, because we've got a lot of bright people in our circles, you know, and so it's good to go through the emotion of it all, but also just trying to figure out, like Wally's been talking about, just problem solving to all this too, because they're complex, deep, you know, systematic issues. But we got to use our brains, our spheres of influence, our circles, our platform, and keep trying to solve these problems just one little one at a time and chip away. But again, really proud of you guys, and it's been an honor to be on the call with you.
Jenny, thank you. Miss you. Best of luck.
Wally.
I'm honored and humbled to be a part of this discussion, to be amongst you all. As always, I've learned a lot hearing from you all. Reflecting on the social media comments, and Jenny talking about raising her girl. We got a social media post yesterday from our daughter Sarah in Los Angeles marching. So that made our family feel great, and maybe some lessons were correctly imparted to our kids. And if we can keep doing it with our sphere of influence, small or big, then we have a chance to make this better, I hope. But you all will tell me if it's not, or I hope you'll tell me what I can be doing differently or better as well.
That's
Wally,
great to hear.
Thanks for
That's
jumping
great to
on.
hear, Wally, that more people are asking, what can they do?
They are, for sure.
That's really important. Malcom,
Yeah, no, thank you for having me on this call. It's Jenny, it's nice to meet you. Wally, good to see you. Jay Willie, good to see you. But no, for me, I think sort of ending the call, I think my two solutions, two of my solutions, I think we have to vote. I think we got to vote at the local level. I think that's huge. I think every level is huge, but I think the local level, choosing people that represent you and represent the community well, that represent those in the lower socioeconomic classes. I think that's super important. Choosing the right prosecutors, choosing all these local level sort of authorities. And then I also think, sorry, I just blanked out. I think the Black community, I think we need allies going forward. I think we need people of all races, white people, Hispanics. I think we need everybody stepping up for us, standing beside us, speaking up, whether it's bringing more diversity into your business, whatever it is, whatever your mode, everybody's not going to be out there marching. I think that's something that needs to be understood. Everybody's way isn't to protest. I think you have to figure out what your way is to support the movement, and that's what you have to go after. But as long as we're all active and we're looking for actionable solutions and not just conversations, I think this can be more and more productive and we can see real change.
I'm going to add to that, Malcolm. If there was a silver lining in everything that's going on, it was really nice to see so many people from different backgrounds protesting and demonstrating and coming together for a social cause that's so important, right?
Absolutely.
So I want to thank all of you for coming on. It was a real pleasure to meet some of you and speak with some of you. And and Locker Room Access and myself, we really appreciate it. And we hope that this will make a difference in everyone's life.
Tate, thanks for joining us. I know you're not a Wahoo, but you're honorary tonight.
No, I appreciate it.
Sure.
I appreciate it. It's been great, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thanks
you.
all. Good job, Mark.
Guys, until next time, thanks again. Take care.
Thank you.